Welcome to another amazing episode of Times Square Kung Fu. I am Frankie Balboa, aka the Shogun Supreme, and I got my pretty Italian brother right here, Peter. Introduce yourself, because people ain't ready.
My name is Peter Gulagowski. I'm a freelance gaming and film critic. I host my own YouTube channel that was my old screen name called King Siggy, and today we're here with Chris Poggiali, the wonderfully knowledgeable writer that does a lot of film criticism and has a big focus on Japanese movies, but specifically for this interview, his knowledge of Kung Fu films.
That's right, and he also is the author with Grady Hendrix, This Fist Break Bricks, that comes out in July, the expanded edition. Chris Poggiali, let him know who you are and why you are the man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, guys. A great admirer of your show and what you've been doing with the comparisons and everything. I mean, we need you during these times with all these releases coming from different companies and everything. You guys do a great job, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on to talk about These Fists Break Bricks, how Kung Fu movies swept America and changed the world. The revised and expanded edition, which comes out, like Frankie said, in July 8th specifically. And it's hardcover as opposed to the previous one, which was soft cover. 40 something extra pages. We crammed it with new information, new materials, new quotes, photos, posters. And we didn't lose any text. Nothing was cut that I can remember from the previous edition. It's all new information and corrections and so on. Yeah, like the title says, revised and expanded.
That's pretty amazing because, like I told you previously, when the first edition came out, I told my followers on Twitter, even I mentioned on YouTube, on Instagram, that this book is something that we needed because the previous book based on East Asian films, but specifically Hong Kong and mainland films, felt more like, in today's term, like a letterbox review. This is different. This is like historical. It gives a first-hand experience. And at the same time, you and Grady Hendrix, who's an amazing person. If you guys don't know who Grady Hendrix is, he is one of the reasons we getting all these East Asian films in America, because he's the co-founder of the New York Asian Film Festival. But this book managed to combine a coffee poster book, historical, and also a first-hand experience. Chris, Let us know how that came to be, because it's two different writers. Was that the intention, to combine like somewhat of a poster book and historical aspect and also personal experience?
Yes. Well, the original idea I had was that I had all these materials because I've been collecting movie posters since I was a teenager, 12 or 13. I had a paper route, and I used to save up my money to buy posters or books or videotapes and so on. So I started collecting movie posters when I was around 13, 14. I've just amassed this collection over the last 40 years. And I was going through the posters one day because I was heading out to Nambaeho, Angela Mao's restaurant, for the first time. This was summer 2018. My brother, who's also a big Kung Fu fan and Angela Mao fan, we were going out together with our sister and my brother's wife, and we were going out for lunch one day. And a couple days ahead of time, I said, "Let me go and grab my posters because I know I have a poster of Deadly China Doll and Lady Kung Fu." So I started going through these posters to find those two, and looking through, and I'm like, damn, I have a lot of I have a lot of Kung Fu posters. And so I went there, had a great time. She signed the posters. We got our pictures taken with Angela, who's wonderful. But when I got back, I said, I better catalog these things and see how many I have. And I don't know, a few hundred just kung fu martial arts posters.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of them. I mean, the ones throughout the book, those are almost all mine. And I have to give a shout out to a great guy named Grant Dellin, who works for Criterion. He photographed most of the posters in the book were Grant's doing back in 2020 during the pandemic. I was bringing the posters in during lockdown. I was like the only person on the train wheeling these suitcases filled with movie posters in, and he would photograph them, and I'd go back, pick them up, bring more. But yeah, the when I really started taking it seriously was when I went through and counted up all the posters I had and cataloged them all. And I had been thinking about doing a book about martial arts movies anyway for a while, and since about 2015, and so then this was 2018. So I said, you know what, I'm going to jump on it right now. What happened was later that summer, my mom passed away in
My
August,
condolences.
late August. Thank you. Yeah, and to take my mind off of that, I just dove headfirst into the book and started collecting all the information I had. I had a lot of magazines like Fighting Stars, martial arts movies, Black Belt, Inside Kung Fu, Inside Karate, etc. Like all these magazines,
so
I had
Chris,
stacks of them.
because I was born in '79, so a lot of us didn't have these magazines during that period. These were U.S. publication magazines during that period.
Yes, yep. The Fighting Stars began in 1973, right before Bruce Lee passed away. They got an interview with him for the first issue, and then in between getting the interview with him and putting out the first issue, he died. So the first issue of Fighting Stars was all about Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon. And then from that point on, the magazine was around for about 10 or 12 years, and it was all about martial arts and movies. And a lot of the coverage was about Hollywood stars who practiced martial arts, like even people you wouldn't expect to be practitioners of martial arts, like Frank Bonner from WKRP in Cincinnati, the guy who Herb Tarlick with all the plaid suits and everything. He was a practitioner of martial arts. Roger Moore, there was an issue with Roger Moore where he talked about all the training that he went through for Man with a Golden Gun. And then they would send people over to Japan or over to Hong Kong to interview like Angela Mao or Tsuko Shiomi. So yeah, it was a great magazine. I have every issue. And then there was another one called Martial Arts Movies that came around. It wasn't around that long. It was maybe 2 years, 3 years.
Right.
That was in the early 80s. Yeah, and then even the magazines like Black Belt and Inside Kung Fu, they would always interview a martial artist who was doing a movie. Like they would, if Chuck Norris's new movie was coming out, they would get an interview with him or Sho Kosugi or anybody. Leo Fong. I have an issue of one of the magazines where Leo Fong is interviewed. I think it's Official Karate. So yeah, we just what happened was I pitched the idea because I had this idea of a combination of like an oral history and a coffee table book to show off all the posters and movie ads and other advertising that I had, and comic books and novels and all the different aspects of the martial arts craze. Music, like Kung Fu Fighting, the big hit song by Carl Douglas. Something that would just tie it all together in one book. And I pitched it to a couple of publishers, and I didn't bother typing up a book proposal like I should have. I just kind of pitched it to some editors that I knew, and they weren't really into it. So around November of 2018, I called Grady, and I had known Grady for a while. And I called him and I said, hey, I have this idea. Do you think it has legs? And I told him all about it. And he's like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And he had just been hired to write a documentary for Netflix called Iron Fists and Kung Fu Kicks. So he worked out a deal where I would help them. I would hook them up with some people to interview for the documentary, and then in exchange for that, they would give us permission to pull quotes from all of their interviews.
Man, Chris, hold up, stop. This is a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and I call you Hollywood. So you telling me you hooked him up with some interviews?
Yes, yeah.
Ooh, exclusive.
Well, I knew some distributors, and that was another aspect that I really wanted to bring into the book, was the distribution angle of these movies, because usually with any genre, they talk about the directors, they talk about the actors, they'll talk about the writers, and what was going on behind the scenes at the studio, maybe, and with the producers and the studio chiefs. But almost never is distribution brought into it. And kung fu, martial arts movies, it's a genre like all exploitation movies, where it's about the distribution as much as the actual making of the movies. I mean, if you're going to talk about the martial arts craze in the United States, you have to talk about the distribution, because a lot of what was going on was in the marketing, the promotion of these movies, and the constant retitling, and how did these movies get to the United States? And it's just an interesting aspect that I don't think was really covered in previous books, like the Rick Myers book.
Yeah, and this book covers that from a very efficient time frame, on top of the influences. And there's something that I learned a lot, and I told this to Peter, is that I didn't realize how much things changed after Bruce Lee's death. And the previous edition cover the blue exploitation era, and Peter learned something a lot about it. I remember we were talking about this, Peter, about how important this thing was, that period in martial arts cinema.
Yeah, and a lot of that came through in the recent documentary, Enter the Clones of Bruce, how there was a fan base hungry for Bruceploitation, and it just, these companies needed to do something. And it's very fascinating. It gave me a new perspective on that whole Bruceploitation craze.
Right. Yeah, and what's interesting is in this book, these Fist Breaks Bricks, the expanded edition, is that you get to feel what was going on during that period in urban cities in America, because the book also brings up about when Bruce Lee died, how a lot of minorities gravitated to that. And I spoke to you about this, Chris, and you gave me a good insight from an interview of why they went to approach, especially with Ron Van Cleef. I mean, can you elaborate that? Because I didn't know this. My dad was alive, during that period, but I didn't know it was that monumental during that time frame, and things change.
I've come to the conclusion that Bruce Lee spent so much time trying to, 10 years, trying to break into Hollywood and become a star, and his fame was so fleeting, in the United States especially, but we're really talking about from when that first movie came out in '71, and he was a star all over the world. He became a star here in the States a lot later, probably 6 months to a year later than in other parts of the world. So when he died in July of '73, there was so little of him on film as a leading man that that it's like the forward momentum of his career it was still going, and it was like, wait a minute, he's dead. People just kept going, get caught up in this wave, and it's like, yeah, Bruce is doing, but he died. I mean, it really started to kick in. The Bruce Lee craze started to kick in like January of '74, because you had a book that was being published. Yeah, and then you started to get the claims. It was real the fall maybe of '73. That's when you had the first movie that got released here, where they were claiming it was the sister of Bruce Lee, or the female Bruce Lee, Judy Lee in Queen Boxer. And then in January, Barry Chan was billed as the next Bruce Lee in one of the, I think it was The Dragon's Executioner was the title of that one. But then they kept coming, and that was around the time they started doing the biopics, with Bruce Lee,
right.
And then there was a book that was published around March, I think, of '74, about Bruce Lee, and so it started to catch on in the fall of '73, but by January '74, and you had David Carradine, who was on Kung Fu at the time. He started that nonsense about Bruce Lee I'm possessed by the spirit of Bruce Lee. He started saying that horse
and
shit.
Also, just to make it clear to people listen to this, you put a lot of posters and newspaper ads, scans on this book, because everything you're saying, you also capture what was going on during that period from a fan perspective and from a historical perspective. So you mentioned all of this. I picture everything you put in that book.
Well, a lot of the ads came from my own collection when I was in high school and in college. In between classes, I would go. Well, when I was in high school, I would go to the downtown library and get them on microfilm. And then when I was in college, I went to the University of Buffalo. In between classes, I would just go around. Excuse me. In between classes, I would just go around to the library and go through all the different cities' newspapers: Miami, Detroit, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, etc., etc. And I still have notebooks by title and month and page, even like where these ads appeared. So I'll know, like, Kung Fu Cops, that played in Buffalo. There was an ad for it in the Buffalo paper, but it wasn't in the New York papers. It just played 42nd Street. There wasn't an ad for Kung Fu Cops. It's just crazy stuff like that, which goes back 35 years when I was in college, or that's actually 40 years now when I was in high school. Wow. Mm-hmm.
But it's something this book does very well during the 70s that I feel like a lot of martial arts fans, especially from Hong Kong cinema, they don't mention, and that is the black exploitation films. Like how they were the first ones, I feel, that gravitated to martial arts films, especially how tied in the African American community was with the Chinese American community. I want to know when that connection happened. What was the movie that did it?
Actually, there were two, and they came out right around the same time. They came out in the summer of '72. Superfly and Melinda. And Superfly, they both feature training sequences where the main character is training. Like in Superfly, you see Ron O'Neal, in the gi, and he's he's
I remember
karate.
Mm-hmm.
And in Melinda,
Superfly came out '72. Like I thought it was later on.
Yep.
Interesting, even though it was amazing soundtrack too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was, I think, the same month. They were definitely, it was the summer of '72 for both of them, and they may have come out even the same month. But Melinda is really important because it's the same thing. It's Calvin Lockhart doing, practicing martial arts, but his trainer is Jim Kelly. And Jim Kelly was a real teacher. He had a dojo in Los Angeles at that time. and he was competing, or he had been competing shortly before that. I'm not sure that he was competing then, but I know he was on the competition circuit shortly before that, and that's how he got the role in Enter the Dragon. A few months later, was the original actor
Wow.
who had been tapped for that was released, we'll say, and they needed somebody, and they remembered, Jim Kelly had, not only is he in that training sequence, he shows up at the end during the action finale. He does some fighting at the end of Melinda. So those are really the two that I think, because that was before the craze kicked in. The craze didn't kick in until '73. So these movies came out, the summer of '72, and it was before even the Bruce Lee movies had opened in Chinatown theaters in the States, because Big Boss and Fist of Fury didn't open here in Chinatown theaters until the fall of '72.
To me, my main question is just, you don't have to give out sources, but how exactly did you find this information? Like, a lot of this is still obscure, and even when we do some commentaries, we run into roadblocks where we get conflicting information because...
It's funny you say roadblocks.
Right.
I told this to Chris. When I feel like a roadblock, I reference this book. That's my secret sauce. I reference this book, look at the notes. Oh, he got it from that magazine, and it leads me to other sources.
Yeah.
So that's how good this book is. But yeah, Chris, go.
To wrap the question, how did you find these sources?
Okay, well, some of them Grady found. A lot of them Grady found. They came from. I mean, some of them came from the Chang-Chi autobiography. I don't know who published it, but there was an English translation, and it's pretty hard to find now. But Grady got a copy of it, and so some of the quotes came from there. Some of them came from the Shaw Brothers publication. They would put out a newsletter, a magazine.
Really?
Yes, yeah. And then there were other publications in Hong Kong at the time, all about the films that were coming out. And, Golden Harvest also put out their own magazine, like right from the start, because they were kind of copying what Shaw
I know
Brothers had done.
specifically Tony Raines covered a lot of that as it was brand new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For Variety, I mean, there was a writer for Variety who covered a lot of the Hong Kong, and we quoted him because he was interviewed. We didn't interview him, but he was interviewed for Matthew Polly's book on Bruce Lee. Mel Tobias is his name, and he was the main guy at Variety in Hong Kong, and he reviewed the movies too, because we actually quote him a review of a Fu Sheng movie, I think Shaolin Avengers, but yeah, so the information came from those sources, but I really have to give a shout out to my friend Brian Bankston, who knows more about Shaw Brothers than anybody I know. If I have any questions about Shaw Brothers, and some of the photos in the book came from Brian's collection. Brian has a huge collection of Shaw Brothers memorabilia and issues of the Studio magazine that I was just talking about, and he does tons of commentaries now. Like I was just looking at that Shaw Brothers Volume 5 set that's coming out. He's all over that, and he's the really the go-to guy, and he does a wonderful blog called Cool Ass Cinema.
Oh, that's him?
That's him.
That's Brian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know, man.
Isn't it great? Yeah, it's awesome.
It's great that you mention him, because, like I said earlier in this interview, if you go to Amazon, put martial art cinema books or whatever, you're gonna get the notable, as I call it, books recommended. But I want to shift it to Grady Hendrix real quick, because Peter is also a notable writer, in case you guys do not know. And I was talking to Peter about this, and I know Peter could ask this question, like how it is to write with another writer. Peter, let him know, what the deal?
Well, yeah, that's mostly what I'm interested in. I haven't done a lot of collaborations in my own career, but what is it like? Do you divvy up the chapters, or does one of you do research? And how did you go about collaborating with Grady?
We did it. We did it a few different ways. I mean, we at the beginning when we were putting together a book proposal, we had to come up with a timeline and a structure for this. I mean, I had kind of a rough idea that we were going to cover mostly 1973 to 1988, but in order to do that, you had to go back to really the turn of the century to talk about when martial arts themselves came to the United States, and jiu-jitsu and judo and so on. So in telling a story really about a 15-year period, we knew we were going to have to go into the 90s on one end and as far back as we could find material at the front end. So we started doing research. How far back could we go? So that was a collaborative effort. It was at times I would go into the city and meet with Grady in his office. So it started that way with us on two different laptops in the same room doing research. We also had to figure out what a lot of those posters were, like what the movies were, because the distributors would change the titles and fake the names, or they'd come up with, it was like a whole day of just researching what these posters were. And I was like, okay, so this is a Jackie Chan exploitation movie being sold as a Bruceploitation movie. So we got to put it over here. This is a Bruceploitation movie, but it's a biopic. So put it over here. This is something completely different. This is an Angela Mao movie, but yeah. So we put everything in different folders marked, for later. This is a Taiwanese movie. This is something from the Philippines, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a whole day. Once we got out some kind of an outline or a timeline for this, then we started to divvy up. I wanted to write the stuff on Sonny Chiba and the Japanese, the samurai movies. I wanted to do something on the 3D movies. These were things that we were throwing around right from the start. We had to have something on paperback books, and that was a chapter that was cut, but it's now in the new edition. But it was originally supposed to be in. Yeah,
right here, exclusive.
Yeah.
But
Chris, a whole section on paperbacks cut.
Yeah, but Chris, there's something I need to thank you because me and Peter are the new school. I've been focused a lot on what's going on with Chinese DTV, archiving it, trying to get as much interviews with these guys while they're young. When I met you, there was a film that kept coming up with your mutuals that I was not aware, and I didn't realize this film is the truth. And that's Billy Jack.
Tom Laughlin plays a Native American Vietnam veteran who's fighting small town corruption, and it was actually the second movie that he made about Billy Jack. He had made a movie in the 60s called Born Losers, which had been sold as a biker movie because he fights a motorcycle gang in that. And that was at the height of the Hells Angels films that were coming out, mostly through American International. So he sold that film to American International, and it did really well. And so that he got money to do a sequel, and that was Billy Jack. And so we knew we had to cover Billy Jack because it was influential. It was one of the first American-made movies to focus on martial arts. I mean, his style was Hapkido,
Oh wow.
and he trained with Bong Suhan, Master Bong Suhan, who, if you've ever seen Kentucky Fried Movie, he plays Dr. Klon in that in Kentucky Fried Movie. But yeah, and Bong Suhan also trained Tamara Dobson for Cleopatra Jones, for the two Cleopatra Jones movies. So yeah, that was, and it was a huge hit because he kept bringing it back, but he wasn't happy whenever a major studio like Warner Brothers handled the movie. He felt they handled it all wrong. He was the only one who could do it correctly, and he proved them all wrong. He went out and he four-walled the movie 2 or 3 years after it had initially come out and made a mint. Because when you four-wall, you rent the movie and then you just collect all the money from the ticket sales.
Wow.
Right. And, reading that part of Billy Jack and, the Black Exploitation chapter, because I felt like it was back to back, it reminded me of my 20s. And Peter could attest to this when The Matrix came out. How a lot of, like Dragon Dynasty, Joy Sells DVDs started becoming more easily accessible in America, especially, Japanese films with, what was that DVD label back in the 2000s? It's not Media Asia, not them, but they always release Japanese films. They're still around.
Oh.
They run discotheques.
Animigo?
I mean, yeah,
Oh, okay.
them. Yeah, they started releasing like Lady Snowblood, the Sleepy Eyes of Death. So I feel like reading this book this is something you guys experienced already in the 70s and somewhat in the 80s. But more of a bigger cultural impact because, like you mentioned in this book, it also influenced music to the point that this book is forwarded by the RZA himself. How did that happen? Tell me.
Well, we know RZA is a huge fan of martial arts movies, and the Ghostface Killer, it comes from Mystery Chess Boxing, and so there are all sorts of references throughout his music, and he was friendly with Tim League from Alamo Drafthouse, so Tim asked him, if he'd write the foreword for us for the book, and he did. He did a fantastic job. I mean, we're really happy with it. And here's a great example of where the second edition improves on the first. He mentions a movie in his foreword called Eight Strikes of the Wildcat, an independent martial arts movie that he saw on 42nd Street. Eight Strikes of the Wildcat. For whatever reason, we did not get the poster photographed the first time by Grant. So I have it, and I got it photographed, and so now it's in the book. So I think
exclusive, people.
I think a lot of everything that he mentions in the foreword is now. I mean, obviously he mentions Mystery Chess Boxing, because it was such a big influence on him. But yeah. So there's an example of, okay, so we had a little more time. We were able to get that poster photographed and get it in the book. We found a place for it. So, he's great. And I did a show with him. I met him at Fantastic Fest in 2021 for the book launch. And he came to Austin, and we did a presentation of. I mean, I just introduced him. I wasn't involved with the moderation of it, but he and Dan Halstead showed Master of the Flying Guillotine, and then they did a commentary over it.
By the way, he's a good guy, man.
And he was taking it around the country, I think, with RZA. They were doing shows where they would either do a new soundtrack or RZA would do a commentary with Dan, which is what they did in Austin. And yeah, I love that movie. So I've seen it so many times, but it was great to watch it and to hear Dan and Riza do a commentary, a live commentary.
Now that's definitely fantastic. But also, like I said, this film, I mean, not this film, look at that. I mentioned before, this book could be a biopic. And I asked you this earlier. How much do you put yourself, like your own personal experience in this book? Because I felt like I felt like you guys were talking about yourselves in this book.
Well, I wasn't around I was too young to remember or to have any experience with that first wave in 1973, 74, 75. My first exposure to martial arts came on television in 1981 or 82. One day I was home on a Saturday afternoon. I was going through cable stations, and I happened upon Drive-In Movie on Channel 5 here in New York.
I remember that fondly. 1986 for me, man.
Yeah, they were showing 10 Tigers from Kwangtung. That was the first one, and it was like a broadcast from another planet. I had never seen anything like that. I mean, I knew about Bruce Lee, I knew about Sonny Chiba, because those had been playing on HBO, or Cinemax Late Night or Movie Channel, one of those cable stations. They had been playing those movies prior to this. And and I knew Hong Kong Phooey, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, and of course the show Kung Fu, David Carradine, which I watched when I was a little kid, but I'd never seen a Hong Kong dubbed. It was totally alien to me. I mean, I'd seen Godzilla movies that were dubbed, but never a Kung Fu movie. So. Yeah, it was really, really. I go, so this is what it is. This is what it's all about. The what still was a couple of years after that when I saw again on Saturday afternoon on Channel 5. I saw Killer from Shantung. Also, the original title is Boxer from Shantung, the Shaw Brothers movie, which is still the bloodiest thing I've ever seen on commercial television. I mean, they did almost no cutting to that movie, just axes, Yeah, it was just crazy. So my my experience is totally from discovering them on television, and so I brought a lot of that to the sections on the television packages, and the selling of the films to TV. But as far as like what was going on in the early 70s. That was mostly interviews and like reading tons of articles, like in all those magazines that I have.
Don't give your source. Don't give the source. Don't give it out.
Yeah.
But yes.
Well, and also like talking to people from the time who, projectionists who ran the movies, and
plus, we know Hector Martinez, Charlie, like they lived through that era. They're amazing Bruce Lee collectors. Like it is insane.
Yeah, we just early on. In talking with Grady and coming up with the structure of the book, we knew right from the start it had to tell a story. And the whole, and it had to be rooted in the U.S. for the most part. In order to tell this story, obviously we have to go to Hong Kong. We had to go, for the riots in the '60s, and then. All the stuff about catch wrestling and so on it's to tell the story because we had, I mean, we knew it was going to be very graphics oriented, very very photo heavy and poster heavy, so it was going to be like a coffee table book in one sense, but also we had in mind Grady's book Paperbacks from Hell, which tells the story of like these horror paperbacks of the 70s and early 80s. But we also had in mind Jeff Chang's book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of the Hip Hop Generation.
Right.
Yeah, we had that also as another. And then our friend Mike Gingold from Fangoria, he put out a book in, I think, 2017, 2018, around there, all about movie ads, horror movie ads from the New York area. And, it was movie ads with captions and so on. So I had looked at that, and I had been involved with that also. I had helped Mike out I hooked him up with an interview for that book. So we had two or three different books in mind, and and we're extremely happy with the way with the way this new edition has turned out. It's just we crammed it
I'm
with
super
information.
excited because, like I told you, I bought this book for many friends. Besides Peter, I always forget. But I'm getting you a copy of this book. Don't give it to him, Chris. Let me buy it for him. I owe him a book.
Okay,
I owe him a book. But yeah, like this is definitely the Bible for this generation and for generation past, because this book got a thumbs up from Hector Martinez. Like I said, if you guys don't know who Hector Martinez is, follow his YouTube channel, Hector Martinez, and put Bruce Lee, and you see why this guy is the man. But Chris,
Hector's great.
Before we wrap this up, this is going to be a hardcover. Are we getting paperback and digital as well?
There will be digital. I probably not paperback anytime soon. There's an audiobook already, but it's
whoa, time out. This is news to me.
Yeah.
An audiobook?
That's pretty great.
There is an audiobook that Grady reads, and it's attached. It's the first edition, but I think the contract on that runs up in a couple of years. So once that runs up, there'll be a new audiobook based on the revised and expanded edition. But there was never an ebook before. The previous publisher wasn't interested in ebooks, which was unfortunate, but there will be an ebook available, and I'm really excited about that as well. But yeah, here it is, and
yes,
nice hardcover.
That looks bulletproof.
Edition.
Looks like it could kill someone. Yeah.
By the way, who did the cover? Who's the artist?
This artist is Pedro Correa is his name.
I think I told you this before on the phone, but I like it captured that 70s Marvel look.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Well, when we were talking about what we wanted for it, we wanted the yellow and black, for the tracksuit, for Bruce's tracksuit. But we wanted the the lightning bolts and so on, and the comic book feel of it, and not so much 70s, but we wanted like that late 70s, early 80s. So we got like turntable and VHS here and a boom box. So we're really happy with it. It was
It captures the era, man. Look, we're gonna put the link in the description because the best place to get this, where is it? Is it Amazon or any other specific website you should recommend to our viewers?
Well, it's all pre-orders now. I would keep an eye on Diabolic DVD. For our friends at Diabolic, because we're hoping
friends with Diabolic. Jesse, they're amazing people. I support independent, family-owned businesses, so I will put a Diabolic link on the description.
Keep an eye on. It's still early. It's only April now, but we're gonna work with Jesse on this, and hopefully we'll get him some kind of a cool exclusive, like maybe autographed book plates. I'm not sure, but we're talking with him about doing something special because he's a great guy and that's a great business. So
it's a great business, and once again, I highly recommend this book to my viewers and everybody, because this book will make you appreciate his films even further than what you already love, because Chris Poggiali and Grady Hendrix gave a lot of context how these films were made, but also what was going on with fandom at that time. So we get to see our spirit selves, if we were alive in that time, how we went about these films. But before we wrap this up, Chris, if there's any projects people should look forward to besides this book with you and Grady Hendrix?
Well, Grady just had a novel come out a couple months ago, and he's on a book tour right now. I'm not sure where he is, but he's doing a book signing someplace, so he couldn't join me and join us this evening. But I want to give a shout out to a couple other people who worked on this book. Kelly McAdams, who's the new graphic designer, she totally redid the book from the first edition. And yeah, she was great to work with. And also our editor at Running Press, because this is coming out from a major publisher. Running Press is a division of Hachette. So this is
so you
really
got a major
exciting.
publisher this time.
Yeah, it's going to be everywhere. I mean, the first edition was around in Barnes and Noble and so on, but yeah, this is going to be around everywhere, and yeah, we're really happy with it. Randall Lodowitz, the editor we worked with on this book, great guy, really wonderful to work with, and he had some really good ideas brought to the table, and he was open to everything. Like we told him we had a list of all things that we wanted to add to the book, and he was like, "That's great, that's great." Oh, you have more? Oh, excellent. Yeah, he was just really easy to work with, and very knowledgeable. He knows a lot about comic books and movies, and so we were on the right wavelength right from the start. And as far as other projects, here and there, I'm doing audio commentaries.
Can we get a hint? Nah.
Mostly the next four, or they're all Toei. The Great Chase, I did that commentary. Itsuko Shiomi karate movie. That's coming out from Neon Eagle, and yeah, a couple others.
But thank you for giving us this exclusive. It means a lot to me and Peter, because there's something the culture needs, and also this new age of physical media that we're going through, because a lot of people crave for like commentary tracks and all that, and this book gives you so much insight that I feel like I could teach in Harvard now. Is that good? But once again, Chris announced the date so we could wrap this up, and Peter will close it out for us.
Sure. Okay. July 8th, These Fists Break Bricks, the revised and expanded edition. It's bookstores everywhere on July 8th.
Just a few days after the Switch 2.
So for us, people my age, think of it as Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition, man. But as always, man, I'm Frankie Balboa, the Shogun Supreme, and I catch you next time. Peace.